there's a lot of conversation right now about China versus U.S. We've got a new administration coming in. You know, uh, my concern, of course, is we've seen recently with DeepSeek, we've seen with nuclear fusion. While the U.S. is vibrant in terms of an entrepreneurial and technology ecosystem and engine, um, China should never be misjudged as someone who is pushing across the board. How do you think about China? How should an entrepreneur think about China?
We are at war with China, and it is it hasn't turned to a military war, but it's actually turned to very much a subversive war in which each would overthrow the government and do all sorts of stuff. And it's not going to go back. It's going to be that way. The two countries fight wars differently. A leader in China, one of the top leaders in China, was describing the Chinese way of fighting war and the Western way, which he calls the Mediterranean way of fighting war. The Mediterranean way is that you go in and you fight to win, and you kill each other, and you do that. The Chinese way of fighting is so that your opponent doesn't even know they're fighting. You win if you're not smart enough to win the war without actually fighting. You must not be very smart.
The art of war.
So it's a war of deception. It's a war of anyway. So there are these different wars going on, the different mentalities, and so that's where we are. I think, and then there's this desire to have these separate parallel universes in technology. I don't believe that you're going to be able to maintain control of intellectual property that is something that is publicly used. I mean, maybe if you go inside your spot and you have sandboxing and whatever it is, and you never bring it out and you never look at it, then maybe you can intellectually protect it. And that's sort of how the atomic bomb was built, and maybe you can do some of that. And by the way, both countries are trying to secretively build the weapon that the other one can't fight against, because if they show the way you really win is you build the weapon that the other one can't fight against secretively, you show it to them, they find out that they can't win, and then you win without fighting. That's the best way. And we've changed the world order, and it's been very clear by Donald Trump that we have gone from a multinational, multilateral environment to a unilateral, each country for their own, might is right kind of environment. And so we are in that unilateral might is right. If I can exert pressure on you to get what I want, that's the way it is, which is historically what most of history has been like. And so, and we have actually done that because we've had a few wars. We had the Ukraine-Russia war, which I think will come to some kind of a ceasefire, which will be temporary, probably. You've had the Israeli, Iran and Iran's proxies war that Israel won. Okay. And you've had a conflict between the United States and China that the United States did much better and China did much worse than they would have expected. And particularly, let's say, the Chinese. And the Chinese have domestic issues. We have domestic issues. We will have our domestic issues, but they have domestic issues. And I think it's like you've banged things around, and you're sort of surprised that the Chinese probably are a bit, and nobody wants to go to worse war. So I think that probably over the near term, you're going to have this behind the scenes subversive kind of war. You're going to, but in terms of economics and technologies, look, the winner of the technology, you cannot lose the war in the technology war. And by the way, that's also something that's economically, like I think in terms of, let's say, the superscalers, and you must win the technology. Not only countries must win the technology war, those companies must win and profit may not be the number one thing. And I think the opportunities are in the applications and the usage of it. By the way, and China is doing a lot better than that in terms of actual applications. We're advanced on the chips, and by how much, but in terms of actual usage of it and betting in Chinese. So we have this dynamic going on, and China has its own set of issues. So I think that probably over the near term, you'll have a lot of pushing the edge and that kind of stuff, but probably not going over the edge. And so, but that's not a permanent set of circumstances, but that would be my take.